Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the LGBT Consortium. My name is Kim Hunt, and I'm Executive Director of Affinity Community Services. We host the show on the fourth Friday of the month, and happy Pride, everyone. For those of you who don't know it, Sunday is the LGBT Pride Parade in Lakeview, and big celebration. As I mentioned, I'm from Affinity. Affinity is a social justice organization that works with and on behalf of Black LGBTQ communities, queer youth, and allies. And our work centers on health and wellness, civic engagement, and leadership development. And we are located on the south side of Chicago. So our guest today is Patty Dillon from Equality, Illinois. And I'm going to introduce her in a moment, but I want to do two things first. One is remind you that this is a call-in show, and the number is 312-738-1060. And our buddy Miles is ready for your call. You never see Miles on camera. One of these days I'm going to get him on camera. But for now, you'll hear his voice when you call. Secondly, as I mentioned, Sunday is the Pride Parade here in Chicago in the Lakeview neighborhood. And over the years, people have asked me how did Pride get started, and what is the history there. So I just lifted a little information off of the internet just to give folks a sense of how long this has been going on and what it's about. So in June of 1970, many years ago, some of you weren't even born yet, the nation's first Pride Parade commemorated the one-year anniversary of the Stonewall riots, and this was a nearly week-long uprising between New York City LGBT community members and police officers following a raid of the Stonewall Inn, which was a gay bar in the Greenwich Village on Christopher Street. And this kind of gave birth to the modern LGBT civil rights movement. And the anniversary of Stonewall is actually this coming Sunday. It'll be 45 years since that event happened. And I was just in New York last weekend and made my first visit to the Stonewall Inn, and felt like I was making a pilgrimage, if you will. So I'm glad to have made that trip. So, tradition spread across the country, and here we are today. So that is a little brief history of how we got to the Pride Parade. So now we're going to shift gears and talk about, get ready to talk about what we're here for. So I want to introduce you to Patty, and she's a longtime advocacy organizer and native Illinoisan. Patty is director of field operations at Equality, Illinois. And during her career, Patty has worked as an organizer with Planned Parenthood in North Carolina and for President Obama's re-election campaign in 2012. As Director of Field Operations, Patty works to expand and oversee the field strategy for Equality, Illinois, growing the supporter base and mobilizing advocates to take action in coordination with the organization's mission. So welcome, Patty.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you.
So you really hit the ground running when you came to Equality, Illinois, not long ago. So tell us a little bit about what Equality, Illinois does and what your role is in the organization.
Absolutely. So Equality, Illinois is a statewide advocacy organization, and we're the largest LGBT advocacy organization in the Midwest. And our purpose is to educate the public, to advocate for LGBT individuals throughout the state, and to elect pro-LGBT candidates when the elections roll around. So my particular position is to really mobilize our supporters and to reach out and cast as wide a net as possible, and to kind of build our network of support so that we have a lot of support behind the legislative pushes and the different educational opportunities that we provide.
Mm-hmm. And Equality, Illinois and other organizations put together LGBT Equality Institute. Was it last month?
Yeah, May 17th.
Great.
I know. It feels long ago.
So tell us a little bit about what happened there, what the focus areas were, and that kind of thing, and what the outcomes were.
Absolutely. So post winning marriage equality, what we kept hearing was, well, you must be done. Everyone's good. We need to just pack up. And that was obviously not true. And so we wanted to pull together supporters and advocates and people who just care about LGBT equality from throughout the state into one space so that folks could talk to each other about what things are still going on in their community, and give folks the opportunity to network with each other, but also to hear from them and to hear from community groups in Chicago and around the state about what they're doing and what's next for our community. And it was very successful. We had over 100 people from around the state join us, and what we kept hearing was we need more time. One day is not enough, or we need to plan for longer sessions, because folks were really having really effective and quality conversations. So we're hoping to really expand it next year.
Nice. And so given that question that people have,
yes,
or that sentiment that people have that we're done and there's nothing else to work on, what is Equality Illinois focused on now?
Absolutely. So, as I mentioned, we were primarily an organization that worked to build support for legislative pushes. So we were involved in the passing of non-discrimination in 2005 and civil unions in 2010, and of course the marriage equality bill. And so we were constantly looking to engage and to really build our network and to hear from people and to hear people's stories and to call upon an entire network of clergy and faith people and different organizations. And we have those relationships, and we're looking to just build that even more. What we've seen is that so many folks don't have necessarily the full level of equality that the law says that they have, or they don't feel that they have equal treatment within their community. And so we want to get beyond Chicago a little bit and get into the suburbs, get downstate, and get around so that we can start to figure out what we can be doing as an organization to build up communities and to make sure that LGBT individuals feel like they have equal treatment in their own place.
You mentioned that one of your things, the reasons that you exist is to help people get more engaged in advocacy and reaching out to their legislators and that kind of thing. And some people find that kind of a scary process. So what do you suggest folks do to get connected to legislators and to groups that are doing this kind of work?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, it can definitely be very scary to reach out to your legislator for the first time, but it's very important because legislators will usually only move or do something if they've heard from their constituents. And so it requires a little bit of, you need to be brave, but you need to reach out, and you can do that from a myriad of ways, as simple as an email. You can also call your legislator's office, but the most impactful is to go to that legislator and sit down and have a meeting with them. And so organizations like Equality Illinois serve as a convener, serve as the kind of a helper to call, lobby day, have a series of meetings. And, if you're connected to our organization or organizations like us, if you're connected with Affinity, we can create that space and allow, folks to talk to their legislators face to face and really let them know what's happening in their own community, because that legislator really does care about their district and what's happening in their district.
And does it matter if folks meet in the district office, or should they go to Springfield as a big group?
So both are very good. Obviously, it's easier, to reach out to your legislator when they're home in their home district, because you don't have to travel very far. But, it's very impactful to have a lobby day, or to have, like we had at the March on Springfield, to have a large group of people in one space. But it's important to mix it up and to also not rely only on one tactic, and to really reach out in a multitude of ways. And also it's important that you're organizing not only yourself, but you're organizing people around you. So you're not the only one doing it, but you're finding friends and family who will do it with you. And so you're just kind of making sure that your reach is as big as it can be. We hear a lot about what happens at the federal level, because that's
what everybody wants to hear about. So how do you tie like local work to what's happening at that level when it seems so distant but still impacts us in so many ways?
Absolutely. Well, it's easy to see how federal legislation would impact you at home if you think about, certain legislation like non-discrimination legislation that the Congress is looking at right now, how individuals within your own community would benefit from that. And if you know people who work for, as a federal contractor, or someone who would be impacted by this non-discrimination legislation, then it's easy to see how that could impact you or people throughout your life. But it's just important that you're making that connection and that somebody is kind of drawing those lines for you, or you're drawing those lines for yourself. So I think that the reason that people always want to know about the federal legislation is because it reaches a large number, it reaches the whole country. But that's not obviously where things stop, and it's, of my opinion, that state-based legislation actually has the likelihood of, doing more, because there's maybe a little less frustration and I don't know, stalemate at the state level.
Are you talking about how things don't move in Congress these
Of course
days?
not.
It is a little frustrating, isn't it? You mentioned the non-discrimination legislation, and for folks who don't know, that's specifically at the federal level, the piece of legislation that's just been lingering on for 20 years. 20 years?
Something like that.
20 years now, in the Employment Non-Discrimination Act. I think a lot of people don't know that it's still legal in most of the country to fire someone because they're trans or gender nonconforming or perceived to be gay or lesbian. And this piece of federal legislation would help, at least on the law, prevent that from happening. So the Pride Parade is Sunday. What number is the Equality Illinois?
We are going to be 10th.
10th. So
we're starting it right off.
Lucky you.
So come and find us.
And are you giving away anything?
We're giving out stickers and candy.
Candy.
And all that good stuff. We actually have the Chicago Sky walking with us on our float. So we'll also have schedules for the Chicago Sky season, which is the WNBA team here in Chicago.
Yeah, we had the Sky walking with us one day, one time, and I think folks were much more interested in the Sky than us. Because there was a guy doing these flips and all this crazy stuff. So you'll love that.
Nice.
So how do people get more involved? How do they get connected?
Absolutely. So our organization, obviously, you can reach out to us, either, give us a call, check out our website, and you can get connected to our email list.
And I should show your website.
Yes. And it's just an easy way to get onto our email list, so you can see the events that we have going on. You can see, what we're doing as an organization, the different legislative pushes, or just the things that are happening in regards to LGBT issues. We try to send out as up-to-date and breaking news as possible, and just information about what we're doing in your community. And we're coming, Pride season is we're in the midst of it, and so we are kind of all over the state, which is exciting, because you can see us in person, and also talk to us and get on, sign a Get Engaged postcard, and really start to see how in your own community can be involved. And we're always looking for advice. We're always looking for opportunities to reach out to the community and to provide new services. And in the coming month, actually on Monday, we're having an event where we are just talking to couples about how you can, kind of in regards to taxes and newly married couples, what they should be doing in regards to filing their taxes. And coming up in July, we're doing an event about the Affordable Care Act, and how when you get married you have the opportunity to re-enroll or to change your coverage. And so we just want to be, as I mentioned before, a convener on some of these important issues, so that folks can learn more about how marriage really can change and affect their lives in a positive way.
And for most of the state, for the whole state, marriage went into same-sex marriage went into effect June 1st, although in parts of the state folks could get married earlier. And so this is a great time to take advantage of those resources because things do change.
Absolutely.
The whole point of marriage was, getting to some of these benefits that folks now have access to. So there is paperwork involved.
Always.
Cannot get around the paperwork. So we know that the Illinois General Assembly has these sessions, right? And we just ended the spring session that started in January.
Yeah.
How's that a spring session? But anyway, and there's a fall veto session coming up. So is there anything that Equality Illinois is going to be focused on for that session?
So Equality Illinois is always keeping an eye out. I think that things might end up popping up. I know that when we, over the course of this last session, we're keeping an eye and very supportive of the anti-bullying legislation that passed and the governor signed on this past Thursday, which was wonderful. We did see unfortunately on the same day, a bill to ban conversion therapies for minors fail. Unfortunately, the way that it failed, we're not going to see it come up again in November, but we're looking for it to potentially come up in the next year. And so at this point, we're not seeing a whole lot of legislation that we think will move that will affect directly LGBT individuals. We always, but like I said, we're always keeping an eye. You never know.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that conversion bill, and maybe you can tell people more about it. But I think, sometimes in Chicago, it feels like we're living in a bubble on a lot of issues. We had a guest a couple of months ago from the reproductive justice movement who talked about how there's been bills introduced many times that limit a woman's right to choose and make medical decisions about her body. And these are things you hear about happening other places in the country and don't think that they'll happen in Illinois, which is why you have to stay vigilant all the time. So can you say more about that conversion bill just so people are aware that this might come up again?
Absolutely. So basically, this bill would ban medical providers from prescribing conversion therapies for minors, and those are therapies that would be kind of working to cure LGBT youths from their LGBT nature. And so it, obviously this bill would be very detrimental. It's been proven time and time again that this sort of conversion therapy is it turns out to be pretty detrimental to someone, especially under the age of 18. And medical professional organizations all across the state and also federal have said that these sort of conversion therapies, they don't support them. And there have been many cases where medical providers who did prescribe or did conduct these sort of conversion therapies lost their license because it's that egregious. And so this would just write it into law. It would say that this is something that could not only be, you could lose your license, but also you could be, it would be, the police would be involved and you would, potentially be tried for a crime. So it just kind of adds another layer of seriousness to this sort of practice that is, like I said, so detrimental. And just the way that it fell within the legislative's calendar this year, it was just one of those things that unfortunately didn't happen, but Representative Kelly Cassidy, who is the sponsor of the bill, has said that she is not finished with it, and she is definitely going to move forward, hopefully next year, to pass such a bill.
Very good, very good. There's another question I had that just had a moment.
It just
so you mentioned the anti-bullying legislation that the governor just signed. So what's going on with that?
Absolutely. So in previous years, there was a bill that was passed into law, and this bill...
Not long ago, right?
Not long ago, just a couple years ago, and it basically just said that all school districts need to have an anti-bullying bill or an anti-bullying policy. And that didn't necessarily have a whole lot of enforcement ability. It didn't have a whole lot of teeth to it because school districts could just say, this is our policy, but there was no follow-up, there was no reporting to the State Board of Election or State Board of Education. And so there was really no way of enforcing this legislation that was at all effective. And so this piece of legislation, this bill that just went into effect, requires just a certain level of accountability and reporting on a yearly basis, and it also just provides a toolkit to school districts from the Board of Education that just kind of gives them extra help, because in many cases it was just a situation of not enough capacity on the school district's part or individual schools to create a policy that was really going to do anything. So this is just I think a good first or second step to making sure that individuals are being held accountable for situations of bullying. And so we'll hope to see a good improvement over the course of the coming years.
Okay. So you've talked about the advocacy part of Equality Illinois. You've also mentioned the other part of this around voting and getting people elected and that sort of thing. So Equality Illinois has a 501c4 as well. Can you explain to people what that is and what it does?
Absolutely. So as you mentioned, Kim, the primary bulk of our work is as our 501c3. It's nonpartisan, it's educational, it's community building, and then there's this other element, this other entity under the umbrella of Equality Illinois, that's our C4, and we're able under that to do lobbying, to work on some electoral work, and then we actually do have an Equality Illinois PAC that allows us to go a step further, and it allows us to endorse candidates and to give money to candidates and to just really push hard when it comes to elections to support LGBT equality candidates. And so our C4 and our PAC will be doing a lot of electoral work moving into the November general election. And actually recently on Thursday had a press conference talking about how the gubernatorial candidate, Bruce Rauner, has said many times that he does not support marriage equality, and also said that he would veto the bill if it had come to his desk last November. And so we just wanted to, as an organization, make that aware to our community and also to general Illinois voters that this candidate, he says he doesn't have a social agenda. It just appears to us that that's not the case. And so we wanted to, like you mentioned before, stay pretty vigilant about this particular candidate. So that's an element. We'll also just be doing a lot of get out the vote and identifying supporters who care about LGBT equality, and just make sure that they know the election's coming up and why it's so important, and really encourage them to go, first of all, to register, and second of all, to
Get
go
out and vote.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then midterm elections are just the voter turnout is so bad. Come on, people.
Right?
We have to. Midterm elections are just as important as the presidential election. In some communities, more important actually.
Absolutely.
Because of the impact that all these policy issues have on such a local level. So folks have to be mindful of that and not think that you vote every 4 years. It's every couple of years and sometimes more, depending on the jurisdiction. So that's I remember when Equality Illinois was doing the Vote Naked campaign.
Yes. So we actually have something along those lines coming up for this year.
Vote Naked?
No, not exactly, but close.
Okay.
So we did do a Vote Naked campaign in 2010 to kind of celebrate and to make very public the fact that folks could vote absentee without needing a reason, which was
not
something
in public.
Yes.
Voting naked.
in private.
In private. In your own home.
Exactly. So it was a kind of a fun, cheeky campaign that it definitely got a lot of media attention, which was fun. But this year, we're very excited because the state of Illinois now has online voter registration, and it's actually starting next Tuesday. So starting next Tuesday, you can go online and you can fill out all the form, or you can just kind of fill out the information online, and you'll receive an email from the Board of Elections saying they received it, and then you should receive your voter registration card in the mail within, I don't know the time frame, but hopefully soon, within a couple weeks. And then you'll be able to go on in November, or if you wanted to vote early or vote absentee, you could do that as well. And you should be all set.
And that's very important, because in a lot of the parts of the country, voter rights are access to being taken away. So this is a gain. So that's great. So gosh, the time has flown again. So I want to thank you, Patty, for coming on, and thank you for the work that Equality Illinois is doing, and enjoy that ride in the parade.
Yes, thank you.
And then I just want to quickly make folks aware of an event that Affinity has coming up, extending this conversation about public policy, and it's called At the Intersections: Gender, Sexual Orientation, and Race in Public Policy, and it's a 2-day forum that we're doing in conjunction with the National Conference, or National Organization for Men Against Sexism, in August, and you'll hear more about that in the coming weeks. So thank you, everyone. Have a safe weekend. For those of you who are going to be watching the parade or in the parade, hydrate with water, and be good to each other, and happy Pride, everybody. Thank you.